Today we will be looking at Heinz Kohut and his self-psychology. The self is going to be the core topic of Kohut. Now, the difference between Kohut and Freud is that Freud is mainly looking at the defenses, the best wishes, the traumatic events, the psychosexual conflicts. We all know Freud. There's no need to explain him. And the central clinical question is what forbidden wish is being defended against. Whereas Kohut is trying to find out what's broken with your sense of self. So his core question is what is fragile, missing, or easily injured in this person's sense of self? Because for your sense of self to break, to develop neuroses, you need to be missing some of these core needs, these self-object needs, the mirroring, idealizing, twinship. If these are missing, then your developmental process is interrupted, which lends you with a self that is fragile, missing something, and easily injured. And he looks at these as deficits. Now, the reason self-psychology emerges is because in Freud's time, there were only hysteria and phobias. But now, with the war happening, people come to Kohut's clinic telling him, oh, I feel empty, or I feel shameful, or I have like an unstable self-esteem, or I'm very sensitive to people, and they had to develop something new. So he created a clinical reality where the self felt inherently fragile and prone to breaking. Now, what's most interesting about Kohut is his view on narcissism. Now, traditionally, in Freud's libido-based framework, narcissism is something that is just a pathology. It's something that needs to be outgrown. As a child, you need to have some sort of grandiosity, those symptoms of narcissism, egocentrism is present in children, but you need to outgrow all of those. Kohut is actually saying it doesn't really have to be like that. You don't really need to outgrow all of it. You just need to outgrow some of it, so it doesn't turn into a pathology. The need to be admired, the need to feel powerful, the need to merge with greatness is just a normal developmental need. It's not a pathology on its own. But if during development there is insufficient transformation, or the child's needs are repeatedly ignored, or he is repeatedly injured, it could be both emotionally, it could be both physically. If the child is injured, then that results in a developmental rest. Now, what is injury here? Think of it like this. As a child, you start crying, you're a little baby, you say, wah, wah, me want milky. And what happens? You get milky. But if you're repeatedly injured, how? Your mother looks at you and says, haha, stupid little baby, wanted milk, fuck you. Then that will injure you. And that's how narcissistic personality develops. To protect itself from the outside harm, the self kind of encapsulates itself in this little aura, in its little shield, so it doesn't get hurt anymore. And that's what we call narcissistic pathology. The concept of the self and self-cohesion. Kohut made the self the central psychological structure, defining it as a person's lived sense of continuity, coherence, vitality, and worth. To understand the concept of cohesion, we can look at physics. It's derived from physics, which refers to the act, state, or property of sticking together. You know the term we use, what is it? Hold yourself together. It's literally that. He is using the term cohesion because self-cohesion is your ability to hold yourself together under stressful conditions. This refers to the experience of internal togetherness and continuity, allowing a person to bend under pressure, frustration, disappointment without completely falling apart. So, being a self-cohesive person is actually very beneficial for you. But how do we see if you're fragile? When an individual lacks self-cohesion, minor setbacks can be experienced as catastrophic injuries. For example, your therapist is slightly late to the appointment, or you received a slightly lower grade than expected, and your whole world starts falling apart. You're worthless. The therapist hates you, or the therapist is incompetent. He should die. This fragility often manifests clinically as feelings of emptiness, hollow unreality, intense rage, brittle grandiosity, withdrawal. Now, what are self-objects? A self-object is a person who performs vital psychological functions for the self, helping to regulate self-esteem, soothe distress, and keep the individual psychologically organized and stable. Now, to understand this, we need to understand the core idea that Kohut does not believe that we are separate individuals at worst. We form our individuality through our interactions with others, through our relationships. It's through these relationships that our separateness becomes bearable. Therefore, early dependence on self-objects is an essential condition that makes later individuality possible. In psychology, when we use the term object, it means other people. To make it simple, other people are objects. Therefore, self-objects are other people that are within ourselves, like that help us form ourselves. We take ourselves from those people. That's why we call them self-objects. And yourself is the subject. We will look at these terms more in Lacan. But it's a good distinction to know. It's why people keep referring to items or things or people as objects. Now, we have three essential needs according to Kohut. We have three fundamental ways we utilize self-objects to glue our psychological identity together to prevent fragmentation anxiety. When these needs are met, self-esteem becomes stable and resilient. The first one is mirroring. The look at me, hello, I'm here. So you look at your mother looks at you, your mother says, yeah, good job, kiddo, I like you. And that's one of your core needs. The second one is idealization. You are great and I am part of you. We need to lean on someone who is admirable, powerful, and stable. Because as a child, we're not really stable. We're, even when walking, we're not stable. Our sense of self is not fully formed. Therefore, we need something to latch onto to keep ourselves together. This is where idealization comes in. We pick a sort of figure that will represent ourselves. We see something great and we want to be that. And that is idealization. And the third one is twinship, or the alter ego. It's the feeling of connection, basically. It's a feeling that you're not alone. It's the feeling that there is someone else like you in this world. So, developmental mechanism, growth, and therapy. Kohut believes that optimal frustration is necessary in order for a person to grow. What is optimal frustration? It is manageable, non-traumatic disappointments that occur within a broader context of empathy. So, as we see this image, there's this child playing with blocks, and we see some of his blocks have fallen down. What happens? he picks them back up. This is a slight frustration, but it silently teaches this kid that mishaps can happen and you can recover from them. Without this frustration, this child will never learn that he has to deal with shit. He believes it's all sunshine and rainbows, which is not real. But what is worse is if he experiences these frustrations in an extreme manner. So he gets beaten. This is not an optimal frustration. This is just a straight up frustration. This is just horrible. What happens? He becomes narcissistical to protect himself. This is what we mean when we need optimal frustration. There's also transmuting internalization. This is a gradual, crucial mechanism where external functions that were previously carried by self-objects are converted into the individual's own internal psychic structure. Never mind my quick little Chinese, it just means that we start to slowly pull away from our self-objects by internalizing the actions we see in the self-object. Yeah. And the goal of therapy is that the therapist temporarily serves as a self-object. Over time, the ultimate goal is for the patient to internalize these regulatory functions from the therapist, creating a more stable and cohesive self. You see, this self is broken, this self is whole. Incredible. So, the biggest technique we use is empathy. Empathy is not just generalized kindness, it is a highly disciplined scientific method of psychological observation known as vicarious introspection. It's used to grasp the patient's inner experience. Incredible. So why don't we just analyze the patients? It's because when you analyze a patient, you might be, actually attacking the patient. The patient might feel that you are attacking them, especially if they are narcissistic. So, when a therapist delivers a brilliant interpretation before empathically understanding the patient's self-object needs, a narcissistically vulnerable patient may experience being right as a humiliating attack or narcissistic injury. This can cause the patient to suddenly withdraw or experience a therapeutic rupture. So you say, yes, your problem is this, this, and this. And the patient says, well, fuck you. And then just never comes back. That's the whole issue. Now, to compare Kohut and other traditions, Kohut versus Freud, psychosexual conflicts versus the self, Kohut versus ego psychology. Ego psychology emphasizes how the ego functions, adapts to reality, manages defenses, but Kohut pushes past this by asking a prior question. How does the actual self develop and remain cohesive enough to sustain those functions in the first place? Now, when I read this, a sudden spark came to my mind. Yes, we believe we have a self, but that self is unchanging fundamentally. When that self develops, it's somehow holding itself back together. We are not a different person every day that we wake up. And then I realized this is where all of these cohesion talks came out from, your ability to self-cohese, I guess, to hold yourself together. It's because yourself is a continuous thing, and Kohut needed to explain it somehow. Now, Kohut versus Winnicott. Now, this is actually interesting because I was quite confused because they are talking about essentially the same thing. However, Winnicott focused on the facilitating environment and the conditions allowing the true self to creatively emerge, whereas Kohut focused specifically on self-object functions like mirroring and processes that kept the self intact and cohesive. Winnicott looks at how the self develops more like, but the Kohut is looking at how the self actually emerges, how you are you. Makes sense? I don't know.